everyone, and welcome to the Climate of Sport podcast. Back with me, Claire Poole. It's lovely to be with you all again. The week after David Attenborough turned 100 years old. Such a master storyteller of our generation, and somehow gets people to be genuinely interested and care about the world around them. So, what can we learn from that? To get the lowdown, head to the link in the bio. But the top line threads that I pulled in terms of what we can take from Sir David Attenborough's greatness around connecting with his audience, I saw five main themes. I wonder if you saw any more. First of all, starting with wonder. He always seems to start from this place of wonder of the natural environment, and it comes from a very humble and honest place, which I think really gets the audience to come on the journey with him. He is a really trusted voice. Not all of us are going to be in broadcasting and live to 100 years old, but I think there's lots we can learn by being that trusted voice within a conversation, which he really embodies. He thinks both long term and he thinks about the whole ecosystem as well. So when he's talking about animals or the natural world, very rarely does he just focus on something in isolation. He always talks about the world in which it lives, or sometimes how impacts in one area can have impacts in another. So connecting the dots on that. He has always embraced innovation, but I think more so than the technology and the innovation that he's brought through his broadcasting, it's his values that really lead, the culture and the values that he embody again. But he has embodied the use of technology all through his broadcasting career. So I think we can learn something from that as well. Yes, technology can help us, but we have to set that culture and those values to really lead on that. And lastly, that I think his optimism really inspires participation as well. So even though he seems to have documented for decades now environmental decline, he always does it through the lens of hope and possibility. You never feel negative. Sometimes you feel quite confronted after watching some of his documentaries about what we're doing to the natural world, but he always seems to instill hope and optimism as well. So maybe we can learn something from that. And I hope you saw lots on his 100th birthday last week, and maybe you shared some stories yourself. Also, last week, the Green Sports Alliance happened in Cleveland. It was lovely to read people's reports of what happened there, and we hope everyone had a brilliant time. We want to hear more, so keep sharing information about what you learned and what was said there for everyone else to enjoy. One comment I saw from Rosalie Morrison at the Cleveland Guardians was that somebody had said in the opening of the summit that change is made in inches at the speed of trust, which kind of sat with me a little bit as well. I think that's maybe a slight change on a really famous original quote, which is change moves at the speed of trust, which was from Stephen M.R. Covey's book. But it really highlights in that quote that was used at GSA that trust isn't just a social virtue, but it actually is something tangible and economic when it comes to dictating the speed of change and also the cost of operations within organizations as well. And that's what that Stephen Covey's book talks about. Trust is particularly relevant for sport, as according to Nielsen's trust in advertising studies, only personal recommendations and branded websites exceed consumer trust compared to sports sponsorships. So we know that sport has this incredible trust, but we also know that a huge amount of change has to take place. So I thought that was very interesting to read as well. I hope you all had great weeks, and we're going to get into our climate hat trick this week. So first of all, the first story is why India is quite literally sprinting towards solar energy. Every great shift in history begins when people choose to move literally and figuratively. That's what the official Instagram account for the Indian government's rooftop solar project said when they were advertising a fun run, what they call a marathon, but actually 2 kilometers to 5 kilometers races, in line with this solar rooftop installation milestone. So India hit the record 270,000 solar rooftop installations in April 2026, a milestone that the government marked not with a press briefing, but with a fun run. So India's Ministry for New and Renewable Energy hosted the Run for Sun Marathon in New Delhi on May 3rd, which actually is International Sun Day. So that makes sense for solar energy, right? They basically turned their clean energy milestone into a mass participation event. And I think this is really thoughtful and savvy. Hostess for the event said calling all solar energy enthusiasts to Run for Sun, a citizen-centric initiative powered by India's solar energy movement. So the messaging is encouraging participation in India's rooftop solar program, which, by the by, offers subsidies, lower electricity bills, and the ability to sell surplus power back via schemes. But this idea sits within a larger economic backdrop of what India's up to as well. So in Davos earlier in the year, India positioned itself as one of the world's largest and most clean energy ready investment markets, saying it requires 300 to 350 billion in renewable energy investment by 2030. That narrative is also already translated into corporate action. So last week, Apple expanded its clean energy footprint in India with a 10.6 million investment as its own 2030 climate deadline nears. What's the connection there? India is a massive part of Apple's global supply chain. So for them, the ability to get clean energy in India is becoming an operational and a climate strategy. So for a lot of multinationals, India is no longer just a manufacturing hub. It's actually become perhaps a grid decarbonisation test case at scale as well. So what does all this mean? India is going out looking for renewable energy investment, and it's also encouraging its citizens to get involved. Where the sport element comes in is a really smart alignment of energy policy and mass participation sporting events. So what they've done is turn a technical adoption milestone into something cultural, something visible, and something engaging as well. So the Run for Sun event is messaging infrastructure, basically, instead of communicating solar adoption through a report or a press release or some posts on social media. The policy is turned into a civic event which embodies movement, participation, and shared experience, what they're also trying to encourage through the uptake of solar. To me, there's several objectives that it achieves here. So it reframes this policy uptake as participation instead of something perhaps dry, straightforward, bureaucratic, etc., in terms of reaching an energy policy, which often would turn people off in terms of governments putting out information about reaching targets in this area. It shifts the solar adoption into not just an energy story, but also a national pride narrative as well, in terms of getting its citizens involved, bringing them out and bringing them together. It links clean energy, subconsciously, I think, to health, to fitness, to public well-being as well, and obviously subtly connect renewables to air quality and livability, where places are moving to renewable energy, the air quality obviously will be improved, something that India has struggled with over the years. We've seen lots of reports out of India's cricket, especially its international cricket scene, of heavy air pollution in those areas. So again, connecting this clean energy with the fun run and mass participation event, fitness and health, I think it's a really, really strong connection. So it's a subtle shift where sport formatting as such is being used as this public interface layer to make something that maybe is more abstract feel immediate and human. I can really see other governments globally following suit here. One to watch. I wonder who we'll see with a similar effort next. Okay, story 2. Atletico Madrid learn it's not always the action. Sometimes it's the optics that are going to get you. The Atletico Madrid team flew from Madrid to London for their Champions League match against Arsenal. The team bus, meanwhile, emblazoned with the crest of the club, was driven the 1,700 kilometres from Madrid to London to meet the squad absolutely empty, save for the driver. Football 365, a press outlet in the UK with 6 million monthly visitors, went in pretty two-footed on what they saw this story as, with the headline, Atletico Madrid is guilty of negligence over ridiculous empty bus antics. It was picked up by other outlets as well. The action of driving the bus from Madrid to London would have totaled about 11 tonnes of CO2 emission equivalent, which is about, we worked out, 0.037 of Atletico Madrid's last reported annual emissions. So not 1%, 0.03%. This is a totally avoidable own goal for the club that has a climate commitment, substantive sustainability strategy, and a disclosed carbon footprint, which includes scopes 1, 2, and 3 for the 24-25 season, that they say is 29,047 tonnes of CO2 emissions equivalent. They are doing really good work, but it reminds us that these small individual operational decisions that are highly visible can disproportionately shape public perception of their climate credibility. In climate comms, symbolism can outweigh scale. So the empty bus becomes more memorable, unfortunately, than the club's broader sustainability programs because these visible contradictions travel much faster than the invisible progress or the behind the scenes work that is perhaps really substantively reducing their emissions at scale. Sustainability leaders work tirelessly around this work, but these small, avoidable climate missteps can invite audience to then question the authenticity of other things that organizations say around sustainability. And we know the hardest part of it isn't about writing a sustainability strategy or having someone lead the work. It's embedding this climate thinking into thousands of operational decisions made every week by sports organizations when it comes to logistics, travel, commercial departments, and event staff. So until that happens, until everybody understands the connection with climate and sustainability within their own work, not only do issues like this come up, but opportunities can be missed as well. So by aligning sustainability not as a siloed department who are doing their work separately, but as a fundamental part of a sporting organisation where there are impacts on all business decisions, benefits can be missed, which can come from massive benefits like engaging with fans who care about this work, who are consuming goods and services and care that there is some kind of environmental or social win to that. Sponsors in terms of what their work they are doing outside of the sports sponsorship and how that aligns, operational efficiencies, and so much more. We've said time and again, it's been said in many, many different ways. Sustainability is not just a department. It's a mindset. It's an operating system. It's a culture. It's a way of being. This isn't the first time we've seen this happen. In 2023, the BBC put out a report about Premier League clubs taking flights to games, short distances, and the emissions of positioning flights, or what we call ghost flights, which is basically planes flying with no passengers to airports to be in the right position to then pick up passengers for the flight that is designated. And we saw this with Premier League clubs taking footballers to and from games. Arsenal told the BBC at the time that domestic flights of this type accounted for 0.25% of the club's total emissions for the season 2021-2022. But that was a story that ran and ran. It's a reminder again, lest we say it, visible contradictions travel much faster than invisible progress behind the scenes. So it's one to remember, it's one to think about, and it's a good story to put in front of colleagues at sports organisations to say this is why it's so critical that sustainability and climate action and climate communications is a part of everyone's decision making and all of our work. Our third story for this week is, what do extreme heat, sinking cities, water shortages, and the World Cup have in common? They are all unfortunately exposing the cost of hosting mega sports events in an era of climate breakdown. Bizarre times in the last week. Last Thursday, Mexico's Education Secretary Maria Delgado announced a decision to end the school year nearly 6 weeks early as Mexico prepares to host the World Cup amid a scorching heatwave. What ensued was a huge amount of criticism and worry, especially from parents who would need to find alternative childcare for the duration of that while, of course, they go to work. Then on Friday, the president, Claudia Sheinbaum, appeared to backtrack, saying the schedule was merely a proposal. But Delgado at the time doubled down, saying, we're going to end the school year on June 5th because many states are already experiencing high temperatures. There's also the issue of the World Cup. Then on Tuesday this week, news came that no changes would actually be made to the school calendar. So the fact that this proposal even emerged, and there was obviously this push-pull publicly between Mexico's officials, tells you something about the pressure that Mexico is facing ahead of the World Cup this summer. This isn't just about schools. Mexico is perhaps heading into the hottest World Cup environment in modern football history. It's already been 42 degrees Celsius in Hermosillo. Heat records have already been broken this year, and more heat waves are expected in June and July during the World Cup. It's going to show up during matches for players. It's going to show up around fan safety, outdoor workers, transport systems, water demand, and electricity strain probably as well. But again, it's not just about heat. Mexico City is running short of water and is actually physically sinking, according to reports from NASA, because of their long-term over extraction of groundwater that sits under the city. Mexico City is one of the world's largest cities, and it stretches out across a high altitude lake and sits above an ancient aquifer, which provides up to 60% of the drinking water for the city's 22 million residents. Mexico City is sinking because it keeps pumping water out of the ground faster than nature can replace it. So aquifers are a natural water source, but if you over extract from them, nature does not have time to replenish it, and therefore they deplete quite rapidly. Millions of visitors are expected this summer for the World Cup, and that's only going to exacerbate the situation. So the city that's hosting the world is literally slowly collapsing under the weight of its own water crisis. Meanwhile, residents around the Azteca Stadium have reported worsening water shortages over the past several months, while the stadium has its own dedicated water well. Locals highlight tourism infrastructure is prioritised and residents are still queuing for water trucks. And in some neighbourhoods around the World Cup Stadium, the Azteca Stadium, residents say they still can't reliably access water and highlight the stadium's private well as an issue. What this brings us to is, whilst we're really excited about the World Cup this summer and the football that's going to happen during it, Mexico might be the clearest example yet that in a climate-stressed world, we can't remove the reality from the spectacle that we are looking forward to. The model of massive tourism influxes, infrastructure projects, heavy resource consumption, and image building is now colliding with extreme heat, water scarcity, and urban fragility, as well as pushing against governments and their decision-making around how they are going to cope whilst major sporting events like this take place. The World Cup's meant to showcase Mexico to the world. Instead, unfortunately, sadly, it may expose the environmental pressures the country is struggling to contain. Okay, they were our climate hat-trick stories for this week. Again, as a recap, they are why India is quite literally sprinting towards solar energy. Atletico Madrid learn it's not always the action, it's the optics that are going to get you. And what do extreme heat, thinking cities, water shortages, and the World Cup have in common? Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok for more content like this on your favourite platforms, and sign up to our weekly Sport Positive brief as well. All the links will be in the show notes. We hope you have a fantastic week, and we look forward to catching up with you again next week for more news, information, and insight. Until then, have a great one.